Seattle has a really great Pride Parade, and it's a really great community.
And so how do we make a space that's both culturally sensitive and affirming, etc., and that is, politically progressive? So many people I know have grown up thinking I must be the only South Asian lesbian or queer or bisexual in my city, in the world, whatever, right? So I think one of the very basic functions we perform is simply to say there is this diversity within South Asian communities which gets lost because of all these other issues that we're fighting, right? I think one of the things that you hear very often is that if you're gay, then there's sort of this equation that if you're gay, you must be white. And I think there are historical factors that make certain communities more, that make communities want to be more homogenous, right? So if you're sort of facing racism every day, then you're thinking that, that being queer is sort of a secondary issue or something. It's just hard within South Asian communities to be out. I think there's huge fear, and that's why it's so important to have South Asians, however they're identifying, marching, because just that simple statement of saying that there are folks who are both South Asian, recent immigrants, or first gen or second gen or whatever it is, and queer or bi or questioning, etc. I think just that is such a powerful statement.
I'm Sister Lotus of all of the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence. It's good to come out and just celebrate. We all live in these lives of and it doesn't, matter orientation out here. It's just pride. It's about being free and being who you want to be and everything. If I can come out looking like this, you guys should come out looking like you look. It's good. People get a little apathetic, and then something happens where funds dry up, and we realize that we have to stand up and not rely on the big status quo monies that come to us. Raise it for ourselves, do a show, sell Jello shots and give them to your community. You're going to drink anyway, you might as well make some money.
There is a challenge for people of color to really find deep, a space to be deeply themselves, not just the superficial cultural food, festivals and clothing fabrics. Yeah, going beyond that and really talking about the deeper issues of our identity. It's a little bit hard. I find it sometimes more difficult here because it's predominantly white city, but on the other hand, it's just so progressive. So it also, if we could do the work, then I think then we can move forward. We can't let other people, we can't wait for somebody to do the work that we need to do. So that's what I think we're all about.
As for these companies, having a spot in the parade, I really appreciate that because, these are companies that really, truly believe what they're saying, There's plenty of companies out there who give millions and millions of dollars to anti-gay legislation. It's nice to know that some companies like Microsoft are supportive of their gay employees, and aren't trying to undermine the movement, if you can say there's even a movement anymore. We found ourselves in a stagnant moment in the movement because we don't have the equal rights, but we're socially acceptable, and it seems like we're not passionate about getting those equal rights because we're okay just being us, I guess. I guess I'm being pessimistic though, because the reality is, probably at least half the people here actually believe in something and care about something and they're fighting for something. But, well, you see it here, but it's the media always focuses on the half-naked men or the crazy drag queens that are really loud and flamboyant, And they definitely have their place in the movement, and I respect that, but when that's all that everybody ever sees, it's hard to take the rest of us seriously, But that's not really their fault or our fault, That's kind of a media thing,
Latinos are disproportionately affected by HIV and AIDS. And so that's a big part of our work. We're also really involved in addressing, issues of homophobia in the Latino community on the one hand, and then also racism in the general community, in the gay community as well. So even though Seattle is a great community, there's always challenges and there's always more work to be done.
What is the G-8? The G-8 is an informal grouping of the world's richest industrial countries, whose leaders met regularly since 1975 to discuss problems in the world economy. Together, the G8 countries represent about 65% of the gross world product, the majority of military power, and almost all of the world's active nuclear weapons. Each year, the leaders stage a summit in one of the host countries. People come from all over the globe to be present at these ministerial sessions, to protest the failures and hubris and the undemocratic foundations of the Group of Eight. A group of activists in Spain called Anticapitalistas, which you can find more about on anticapitalistas.net, sent us the following video about how the G8 operates. Their group is currently in Japan protesting the G8 summit on the island of Hokkaido this week.
El G8 es el grupo formado por los 8 países más poderosos del mundo. Está formado actualmente por Estados Unidos, Francia, Inglaterra, Alemania, Italia, Canadá y Japón. Para remontarnos a los orígenes del G8 habría que ir a los años 70. Los años 70 es una época muy complicada a nivel político y económico, hay una crisis muy fuerte. Entonces el G8 surge como una propuesta por parte de Estados Unidos con sus aliados más próximos de crear como un grupo, un núcleo duro, un grupo de los más fuertes dentro del bloque occidental para intentar coordinar las políticas internas e internacionales para salir juntos de esa situación de crisis y poder sacar una estrategia nueva para imponerse en la Guerra Fría. El G8 probablemente es menos conocido que la capacidad que tiene de influir sobre otros países es menos conocida que organizaciones como el Fondo Monetario Internacional o el Banco Mundial, dos instituciones que están gestionando la deuda externa de un montón de países de la periferia y que a través de esa cadena de la deuda están imponiendo lo que son las políticas económicas y sociales que los países de la periferia tienen que adoptar, ¿no? Específicamente desde el FMI y el Banco Mundial se han estado impulsando los llamados planes de ajuste estructural, que son una serie, unos paquetes de medidas de ajuste de cómo son las políticas económicas y sociales, que han tenido unas consecuencias sociales muy duras en aumento de la pobreza, en aumento del hambre y en aumento de los desequilibrios, ¿no? Bueno, pues ni el FMI ni el Banco Mundial son instituciones autónomas que estén decidiendo ese tipo de políticas por su cuenta, sino que están controladas por un grupo de países muy pequeños y muy especialmente por los países que forman el G8. Tanto el Fondo Monetario Internacional como el Banco Mundial funcionan por un sistema de votos por cuota. Esto quiere decir que el número de votos que cada país controla en una votación a la hora de tomar cualquier decisión en la Asamblea General, tanto del FMI como del Banco Mundial, va a depender de la cantidad de dinero que aporta el Fondo Común. Es decir, el sistema no es de un país un voto, sino de $1 un voto. Esto lo que va a provocar, obviamente, es que los países más ricos puedan controlar un nivel de votos mayor y de esta forma poder ganar cualquier votación que se haga dentro dentro de estas dos instituciones. Concretamente, los países que forman parte del G8 controlan el 47% de los votos en el Fondo Monetario Internacional y el 48% de los votos en el Banco Mundial. Esto quiere decir que les basta con contar con el apoyo de cualquiera de sus aliados para poder ganar cualquier votación dentro del FMI y el Banco Mundial, lo cual convierte a estas dos instituciones en una correa de transmisión de las órdenes de estos países. Todo el material que se produce en el marco del G8 es secreto. Esto quiere decir que ningún ciudadano de ninguno de los países miembros puede acceder a los documentos que estos funcionarios elaboran, ni siquiera tienen, digamos, estructura oficial dentro de que haya una oficina a la que un ciudadano pueda acudir o a algún sitio donde uno pueda ir a ver qué es eso. Esto lo que convierte al G8 en un gobierno mundial en la sombra.
You think not getting caught on a lie is the same thing as telling the truth?
No. It's simple economics. Today it's oil, right? In 10 or 15 years, food, plutonium, and maybe even sooner. Now, what do you think the people are going to want us to do then?
Ask them.
Not now. Then. Ask them when they're running out. Ask them when there's no heat in their homes and they're cold. Ask them when their engines stop. Ask them when people who've never known hunger start going hungry. You want to know something? They won't want us to ask them. They'll just want us to get it for them.
It's the end of the world as we know it. I feel fine.
Good morning, slaves, and welcome to another edition of It's the End of the World as we know it, and I feel fine. Your best source for news, weather, and traffic reports. I am your host, the Stimulator. And in the short time I've been off the air, the fish has literally hit the fan. In news of the hungry, the soaring price of food has been igniting riots in many countries during the past year. But it took hundreds of hungry Haitians storming the presidential palace in Port-au-Prince for the bottom-feeding corporate media to pay attention to a story that's about a year old. The crisis has been blamed on global warming, droughts, floods, skyrocketing oil prices, and the use of food crops as Hummer snacks. But the mother-ass clown that occupies the White House thinks otherwise.
Actually, I have a little different take. Our farmers grow energy as opposed to us purchasing energy from parts of the world that are unstable or may not like us.
Maybe this fucktard is trying to avoid having thousands of hungry, homeless, and angry Americans from paying him a visit at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. After all, he is responsible for the big push for biofuels, until recently denied that global warming was a problem and looked the other way as greedy motherfuckers suckered working class Americans into loans they could not pay. As Bob Marley once said, yes, my fellow slaves, the collapse seems to be right around the corner, but most Americans are too distracted by the primary horse race.
Watch the hands, watch the hands.
If you don't believe me, let's recap a few fun things that came up this week. The price of crude hit an all-time high, $120 a barrel. To make things more interesting, Saudi King Abdullah has ordered for any new oil finds to stay in the ground. With their mighty Ghawar oil field already in decline, this is bad news for oil importers, aka the United States. Kicking it up a notch was an announcement made by OPEC's president, Chakib Khalil. Mr. Khalil said that oil could reach up to $200 a barrel by this year. Also, the high price of jet fuel grounded 3 airlines in just 1 week. And as I said earlier, food riots have erupted around the world including mass demonstrations in Egypt, Cameroon, the Philippines, Ivory Coast, and Senegal, to name a few. But one thing that might make Americans hop into action is beer. The price of hops, a key ingredient in making brewskis, has increased tenfold in the past year, making the overall price of beer to go up. With a hot and dry summer being forecast, it might be a good idea to look for a luscious substitute drink. And speaking of LSD, Albert Hoffman, the inventor of the CIA's favorite party favor, ended his trip on planet Earth this week at the age of 102. Hoffman is credited with helping millions of people enjoy bad music and think they can fly. With everything being so puffed, it may be a good time to take a little break and spend the weekend staring at the mirror.
You have not seen underage girls on your compound being married?
It's not a compound.
Do you understand the allegations?
It's not. It's our ranch and it's our homes. It's our ranch and it's our homes. It's our ranch and it's our homes. It's our ranch and it's our homes.
Underage girls have sex being forced. Do you know that?
It's our ranch and it's our home. It's our home.
But again, when you're
it's not a compound.
Your lifestyle.
It's not
being forced. Do you know that?
It's our ranch and it's our homes. 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 It's not a compound. It's our ranch and it's our home. It's our home.
It's not a compound.
Holy shit, that was cuffed. But what's even more cuffed is that most Americans don't celebrate or even know about May Day, a day to remember the fight for the 8-hour workday, and a struggle that was started by a coalition of American anarchists, socialists, and laborers. As I type this, millions of people across the world are taken to the street to commemorate this important event and to celebrate those martyrs who died fighting for our rights. Yep, American history is full of great victories for the working man, but yet remain absent from most history school books. Thanks to badass filmmaker John Sayles, one such story is retold as a cinematic masterpiece. This week, in Where the F Have I Been, I bring you Meituan.
You want to be treated like men? You want to be treated fair? Well, you ain't men to that coal company. Your equipment, like a shovel, a gondola car, a hunk of wood brace. They'll use you till you wear out or you break down or you're buried under a slate fall, and then they'll get a new one. And they don't care what color it is or where it comes from. It doesn't matter how much coal you can load or how long your family has lived on this land. If you stand alone, you're just so much ish to those people. You think this man is your enemy? Huh? This is a worker. Any union keeps this man out ain't a union. It's a goddamn club. Now they got you fighting white against colored, native against foreign, holla against holla. When you know there ain't but two sides of this world. Them that work and them that don't. You work, they don't. That's all you got to know about the enemy.
That was Joe Kenahan, played by actor Chris Cooper. Kenahan rolled up in the mining town of Meituan to help organize the union. Back then, as it is today, corporations were not too fond of unions and would bring in low-paid workers, such as minorities and foreigners, whenever there was a strike. The mining company would go to great lengths to break up unions. They would pit workers against each other and also bring in the Pinkertons, a muscle-for-hire company that specialized in such dirty deeds. Think of them as the Blackwater of the early 20th century.
Easy, agitator.
Everybody, see I don't got a gun on me.
What good do you think that's gonna do you, Red?
You shoot me, folks will know it was murder.
Well, that's some cold comfort. You listen to me, Red.
So, if you want to take a glimpse at some of the revolutionary activity that took place in the US back in the day, or if you just need a little inspiration for the upcoming uprising, watch this flick. If I had hands, I would give it 2 thumbs up. As young revolutionaries, we sometimes get caught up trying to reinvent the wheel, when there have been people before us who have been fighting the good fight for some time, and who can teach us a thing or two. This week I bring you Rowland of Pepper Spray Productions. Randy was a GI war resister during the Vietnam quagmire, and did some hard motherfucking time in the clink for refusing to fight. He is one of the founders of the Indymedia Center, and a veteran of the WTO protest in Seattle. Hey Randy, how the are you?
Well, I'm good, thank you.
So Randy, I will ask you only one question. What is the role of independent media during this election year?
One of the things that leftists do every 4 years is carp about elections. And how, if voting really changed anything, they'd make it illegal and this and that and the other thing. And, and then other leftists say, no, we gotta participate in the votes. We can't separate ourselves from that. And, everybody argues back and forth on it. And I've been thinking about it a lot. And I've been thinking about it in the context of this one certain event that happened during the WTO protests in Seattle in 1999. Early in the morning, the more militant elements had gone down and seized the downtown area of Seattle. They got up early before dawn, and they kind of caught the cops off guard, and they did a lot better job than the cops had planned on, and they really took the initiative, and they seized the downtown, and they blockaded things so that the delegates couldn't go over to the convention center, and so as a result, the WTO couldn't open because nobody could get into the building. And they held the line pretty well, and as the morning was going on, they really needed some reinforcements, though, Meanwhile, what was going on across town was this huge rally of the AFL-CIO. There was like 50 or 60,000 union people in the stadium on the other end of town. And they were getting ready to march out of the stadium and march in a great big union march, anti-WTO march, right towards where the action was going on downtown. But the march plan was that they were going to march down, and then at a certain point they were going to do a U-turn and march out of the city. Well, there's kind of a famous conversation that has been well reported that happened between the city officials and the federal officials. The feds were in town because Bill Clinton, the president, was about to come to town to speak at the WTO, and they wanted things to be in order. And they clearly weren't in order. The activists had kind of seized the initiative, and it was out of control. And so the feds asked the city guys, well, what's your plan? How are you going to take care of this? And the city guys replied, in what is now kind of a famous reply, they said, well, the Union March is going to march in, and what we're hoping is that the militants will join the Union March, and then when they circle around, they'll march right out of town, kind of Pied Piper style, and the march will drag them, it will draw them out of town, and then we'll be able to take control of the downtown and restore order. Which the feds, more sophisticated, I suppose, than the city people, just laughed at that idea. They said, that's it? That's your plan? Well, the people on the barricades had a different thought. And their thought was that here comes the Union March in numbers greater than we could ever dream of. What they did is they sent agitators over to the place where the U-turn was supposed to happen to line the streets and to call to the Union folks that were in that march. And they said, try to encourage them to break ranks and leave the Union March and come downtown to where the action was. We're shutting it down, man. We're really doing it. Now, I'm glad the Union March happened, but frankly, if it had only been the Union March, the WTO wouldn't have made history like it did in Seattle in 1999. It took the militants downtown who were actually shutting it down, physically barricading things and, doing all that but it also took those union guys, because what happened is that a lot of them did break ranks and went downtown. There was a lot of Union jackets down there, and it multiplied by several orders of magnitude the amount of people who were, like on the line downtown, holding the downtown area, and the cops never got a chance to restore order downtown for the whole rest of the day, and they had to call martial law and bring in the National Guard. So how this relates to the elections is this. The electoral process and the candidates and all that kind of business is putting people into political motion. Now, leftists can say that, like the Union March, the elections are going to take people and circle them right away from the action at a certain point, And and draw them away from it, Pied Piper style, just like the city officials were hoping was going to happen during the WTO. But I think that you could go too far down that road, because the truth is that what happened in real life during the WTO was that the activists didn't spend their time insulting the union folks for having their march. They were glad they were marching, but instead sent the agitators towards the march and encouraged them to exceed the limits and go beyond the limits of the march and to join the barricades. I think that what we have is an opportunity between now and Election Day, when the people are in motion. They've been put into motion by the electoral process, but they're asking the questions, they're debating among themselves, they're reading everything they can read about it, they're interested, and they're involved, and they're dreaming dreams. We have an opportunity to send the agitators to that river of humanity that's marching towards the ballot box. We can call to that river of humanity and get a lot of them to break ranks and exceed the limits, and and take more militant actions and really go for it. To really dream a dream of actual success, not just going through some motions or electing some guy who's promised that something's going to happen, but actually shut it down. I think we can do it, and that's the role of independent media, because we are the megaphone of the movement.
And that about does it for this edition of It's the End of the World. I was going and I feel fine. To check out Randy's independent media work, visit peppersprayproductions.org. For links on the upcoming DNC and RNC actions, visit my website, stimulator.tv. And may the force be with you.
Remember, kids, you can podcast high-quality video of this show at submedia.tv.
Ha 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 ha!